Interesting.
Specifically that nowadays everybody's using technology, and a lot of people don't realize or maybe are ignorant to the fact that once you do a Google search, you're using AI,
Yeah.
right? It just reads, no search now is just depending on an indexing and just gives you a result. It just looks into your profile, what have you done, and all of these things. So it uses AI in the back. Facebook.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wiz Talk. And today I have Hisham Qaddoumi with me. He's an AI expert, a TEDx speaker, founder and CEO of QWS Technologies, and the list goes on. But I'm so glad to have you guys back. Like Hisham, we met in PodCamp and I saw you in its presentation. It was really interesting. So what this was my takeaway was that you talked about how artificial intelligence is basically it has a lot of myths surrounding it, and we need to break those myths to take the benefit from it.
I will start with a quote from
Wow.
Baz Luhrmann. Life that is lived in fear is life half lived. And, I see, not just about AI, we are in a time that people have a lot of fears of immigrants, fear of viruses, fears of technology. But, fear is not always bad. Fear is what makes human survive. Our fear of, wild animals is what made us be those ones who can affect ourselves, made all those tools and protecting ourselves. But there are some kind of fears that I see that we are, irrational or uncalled for, like the fear of AI or fear of technology. Specifically that nowadays everybody's using technology, and a lot of people don't realize or maybe are ignorant to the fact that once you do a Google search, you're using AI.
Yeah.
Right? It just reads, no search now is just depending on an indexing and just gives you a result. It just looks into your profile, what have you done, and all of these things. So it uses AI in the back. Facebook, Instagram, all of them are using AI. So the fact that people say I'm fearing of AI, but you're using all of those tools, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So what do you think are the main myths around AI?
You look at the Terminator ones; these are the biggest myths. And it's not that I don't like watching these things because they are fantasy. They are like pieces of art, and they're like imagination. And to be honest with you, they're also kind of they tell us also some messages. Like if we didn't control the technology and all of these things, bad things could happen. Maybe not that way, but it's also about humans and how they have to control where the technology, where everything is going. But I always tell people we should stop looking at those things as documentaries that are made in the future. First of all, we are so far from a generic AI that resembles all of the human thoughts. What we have right now is what we call narrow AI. Applications that concentrate on one function, that does one thing for you, and that's it. Like if you make an AI to play chess, you cannot make that AI play another thing, like AlphaGo or something. It's just made for that. It does it very well, much better maybe than a human being.
But I saw you talked about something that now artificial intelligence is creating artificial intelligence on its own. But isn't that scary? At the same time, because you're saying that there's narrow AI, but also there's AI making stuff on its own.
Every program that we have done before the thing about it. First of all, let me just put something in there. AI is not a word that I like too much because it just came in from somewhere, but it does not. AI is there before the computers. If you look at the machine that has been done by the British. By Alan Turing.
World War II?
World War II.
Oh, okay.
For the Enigma. That is AI. That is an artificial intelligence. It was before computers. It's what we call mechanical AI because it works on mechanics, and it just guesses the things and it tries it, and then when it gets like a real result, it builds on it. So, from that we moved into computers. So technology and everything improves itself and creates itself and duplicates itself, and there's nothing just stands up like in a one point and then does not improve. It is not our human. If we stopped improving, then we'll be like other creatures.
Yeah.
It is our nature that to improve things and create things that improvable or even improve themselves. As I said, AI is now creating AI, but it's still for the same purpose. That is you. So, for example, like you have apps on like Windows Azure or AWS or whatever.
Yeah.
You can create your own AI without coding. What's behind that is another AI, big AI that helps you. It gives you that, but it's also very targeted to that thing. You cannot make an AI create another AI that's the information is not fed into it or not programmed to do it. It's going to be there for a long time as well. And so see, the idea of creating a general AI that thinks like a human being is really tough, because we have not understand yet our own intelligence in whole, like
Interesting.
yeah. So I've been looking into artificial consciousness for like the past 3 years. I'm doing my own research about that, and to have general AI is to have consciousness, because we're not just about logical beings. We're not just about calculating. What makes us who we are is that we are conscious, is that we're autonomous. If you were in a building, God forbid, and there was a fire, and you have never been trained to escape, your instinct works, and you start calculating, and you know where your exits, and because it's for you, it's about life and death. Nobody taught you that, but it comes to you, and you create all of that. Now, this creativity is not there into machines, and to make something like that, it's also not just about giving data, it's about giving consciousness, awareness.
But is there a possibility of that, or these sci-fi movies are just a fantasy, or is it a window to the future, like the stuff in Terminator or like other movies, that these robots can actually think for themselves and they can do stuff? Is that possible?
I wouldn't say no.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say also that it's going to happen in a way that makes them evil and come to kill us. You have a kid and you raise your kid to do good things, right? So most probably the kids who are raised in a good environment are going to become good people. Right? But if they were raised in a bad environment, by bad parents and all things, but most probably would be bad people. So I think about it that way. If we targeted those machines to do bad things, and it happens sometimes, right now, even without general AI, if you targeted them to do bad things, then they're going to respond to that, because this is what you feed into them.
Interesting.
Right? And we have noticed a lot in the recent year about what do they call machine biases. A bias against a specific ethnicity or a specific demographic or a specific religion or something like that.
Like,
and people,
what happened in China? There was a whole campaign against Muslims, I think.
That was in the Rohingya. You know that there's an AI now. When you go to get a mortgage or something, the banks doesn't do that manual process anymore. They put your data in an AI, and that goes and checks on your balances, it checks on your credit score and all, and generally gives the credibility. Are you going to be able to pay or not? And it's usually gives like a prediction, but the thing is that human has to overlook and see the data and how it came along. Most of the time, humans don't look. They say like, okay, so the computer said like there's a 90% chance that this guy is not going to pay.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to pay, so I'm just going to disapprove. It happens in the United States that it was targeting minorities, like black minorities and all the things. The problem is there was nothing in the data that says that this person is like a black or Asian or anything like that. It's actually illegal. But what happened is that the zip code, because you have to give a zip code, and in the United States, the segregation, the historical segregation, that the multiple zip codes are known to have specific ethnicity. So those zip codes with poor black people, mostly of that. So the computer says like, people from that zip code are not very well paying. So it's most probably this guy, because he's from that zip code, is not going to pay. Now, this is to the machine. This is a very logical thing. The machine didn't know that that zip code is mostly, you know, most of the people who live there
Are black,
black or Asians. But the human biases, the segregation for centuries that let those people come and live together. Besides also the biases of ethnicities, that it's also easier to live near to someone very near to your culture.
Interesting.
You know, who understand you. That, so that's the other bias, that the internal bias, that you feel very comfortable talking to someone that comes from your original country or your skin color or something. So this created that machine bias. Machines are not biased. Machines are just logic,
but the human bias are put into them, and then they bring out results accordingly.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It inherits our biases because this is the data that they get.
Mm-hmm.
They get the data from us.
Yeah.
Right? And we are biased by nature.
So in order to make machines or like this intelligence work for ourselves is to improve on ourselves first.
Well, it happens with or without machines, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like even before machines, if I still remember when I was a kid and everybody was telling us like, if you go to the United States, don't go to these places. There's a lot of black gangsters and all of this. Yeah, and it was like, of course it is, now when you say it, it sounds very racist and all.
Yeah.
But at that time, this is the biases that was told through the media.
Yeah.
That was told through some people who are anti-immigrant or something like that. That is human bias, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because humans are biased against each other and biased towards people who are just like them, they created those segregated places, like they live in one zip code.
Yeah.
And that was inherited because this is data, and computers know just data. They deal with data.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You also took a deep dive into philosophy. I heard that you, before going into artificial consciousness, or I think after that, you for some time took some off and went into philosophy. So did that philosophy of learning about human mind had links to artificial consciousness?
When I started studying about consciousness or artificial consciousness, I realized that I cannot go anywhere without understanding human consciousness, right?
Interesting.
And to understand consciousness, you have to go, because consciousness is something that is very, how can I say that? It's a very virtual thing. It is not something that has a standard. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's philosophical thing, right? So I've read a lot of books on philosophy, like Daniel C. Dennett on Consciousness Explained, an amazing book. Steven Pinker, How the Mind Works. And I was amazed, not by these books, but how little that I know about my own mind, about my own brain, about my own consciousness. I started discovering my own biases.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to think that I traveled a lot, I went there, I met a lot of people, I have friends from all around the world, and I may be the one with almost no biases, but I then realized that I still have biases.
Yeah.
You know, but unconsciously biases. But what I say that the most interesting thing that I've got out of it is like, now I'm aware when I'm feeling biased. You know, I can tell you a little story. Like I go into the bus all the time, and for a while I was going every morning, and this girl, young girl, millennial girl, sitting always like in front of me somewhere, and she has those earbuds in her, and she's going on the phone. And you know, I love millennials, but there's this wide understanding about them that they're always listening to music and they don't give a damn about the world and all that thing. And I was looking at her and saying like, okay, millennials, I don't know what's about. But once upon a time, she sat right next to me.
Okay.
And she was listening and she was having the phone on her. And I couldn't resist this, you know, the need to peek on and see what she's listening to. She was actually listening to an audiobook. Actually, one of my favorite books, it was Dan Brown's Origin, which I read like a year ago. And I was looking like, it's like, oh my God, we're not too different. I look a lot. And I realized when I was thinking that way, I was submitting to a cultural cliche that millennials put those things into their heads, listening to loud music, don't give a damn for what the world is going around them. And I say I submitted to a cultural bias.
Mm-hmm.
Totally, it was unintended bias, but you just submit to it. But here's what I'm telling you is that after reading these books, I'm now more conscious of recognizing my own biases and trying to fix them. So I would say, like, from now on, I wouldn't be, assuming that anyone, specifically millennials, who are putting their earbuds, are listening to loud music and don't give a damn about the world. I don't know, but I will assume that they are maybe they're reading a book or a report about a news report about something that is happening, or I don't know. But I stopped that. See,
I think I had a lot of biases because I came to Canada, like I've never seen this amount of diversity. Like in India, I'm from India, and there's a different kind of diversity. But here it's a mixture of the whole world culture. And when you come from India, there are a lot of things that, like my parents told me, oh, don't go near those areas, like with black people, like you told me. And I was really interested. I was like, why? When I came here, because I met so many people who were black, who were from different ethnicity, and they were such nice people. And that's when I actually broke my biases, and I realized that this is a false bias that I've been carrying all my life, and this is what's affecting me in my growth.
Technology, this is what we inherit into the machines. And this is what we should be worried about. Not the machines themselves, not the AI itself, but what we actually put into those, what kind of data we put into those machines, and how do we use them. Like when the Cambridge Analytica story came out, and people realized that there are companies that are using their data to target them, to micro-target them, and change their minds about something. And I know that Cambridge Analytica said that, oh, we didn't do that, we're just doing like a political campaigning, but that was like really funny to say, because the cover image on their Twitter was saying exactly data-driven behavior change.
Ooh.
And I was like, so this is the kind of AI that I don't like.
Yeah.
But this is driven by people. It didn't create itself to do something like that. Now, the usage of data that they took from Facebook, and they manipulated that to target people, to make them even vote for someone who they never thought that they vote for or anything like that. This is the kind of things that I would say people should be aware of. I'm not saying afraid, because fear is not going to lead you. Fear is going to lead to panic. Panic is not going to lead you anywhere. You should be aware of that, because once you know that that this is being used against you, you could take an action.
Yeah.
I always give people the example of the knife. Knife is one of the first tools that humans have ever created.
Mm-hmm.
So knives are or cutters, any type of cutters, they are very useful tools. Actually, they contributed for us to be more conscious and to improve our intelligence by cutting food and making it easy to digest and all of that, to cut things through when we are going into the woods and all. But that didn't stop some people from using those knives to kill other innocent people. So when something like that happened, what do? Do you blame the knife? Do you blame the knife maker? Do you blame the knife inventor? We'll never know. Or do you blame the person who used this tool to kill someone who's innocent?
So it's a tool, and it's our responsibility how to use it.
Of course, everything is.
Yeah. You also had a very interesting outlook on education. You said that we are learning yesterday's book and trying to imply in today's life.
Well, I'm very, very passionate about education.
Yeah,
because,
me too.
Because when I see, and I'm also about mental health and mental health and education for that matter. And you see a lot of those students nowadays going out, jumping from a building, committing suicide, and you say, like, why is that happening? I mean, when we were students, like 30 years ago or something, we were very excited that we want to finish this and go to the world and make the change. But you see all of those young students, and they're like desperate, and they don't know what to do, because they know somehow that what they're learning now is going to be obsolete in like 5 or maximum 10 years to come, and they're most of them are paying that in debt, and they have to pay that. after they graduate. And I've heard that with the new policy, you don't have even 6 months to pay after you graduate, so you have to start paying. So you don't have a job yet. Your education didn't give you a chance to have some new skills, so that you will be actually relevant in the market.
Yeah.
And you have to pay a huge debt.
How do we change this? Because this is in every university all around the world. Like, I used to think that in India, I went to college and it was the most boring stuff I've ever seen. It was not even, like, we were not even using practical material, it was just books. And when I came here, I thought it would be different. It was the same. Just a couple of computer lessons or something. How do we bring that change? Because whatever I learned didn't actually help me in my job or anything. So how do we bring that change?
At 70% of what you get through your education, through your college education, is something that you will never use.
Yeah.
Even if you worked in that field that you studied for, you know. So when I went to college, when I went to college at the time, I wanted to go to learn, because I was programming since I was 9 and I was playing music since I was 7. So I was like,
so interesting.
This one or that one, and then I looked at at what they teach them in the college, and they were still teaching them COBOL and Fortran and things that I was doing when I was 14. Whatever. I was like, I was doing some things on Visual Basic and all of these things, games and all of this, and I was like, I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah.
Okay, I might, because in my days, a college education was very important. It doesn't matter what college, what type of certificate. So I went and studied music, but while I was studying music, actually, there was this computer lab in our university that you could pay very less per semester and go and use. I learned HTML by myself. The internet came in at the time. It was the first versions of the internet. I learned HTML myself. We learned, then in 1996, JavaScript came in. Then after that, CSS came in. So I think that self-motivation is a very important thing.
Interesting.
Because it might take a lot of time for these educational institutions to get updated.
Yeah.
We have a problem in our education is that it's really slow. There's a gazillion things that we can talk about. It's not the time, but it's very slow. There are also now there's the concept of alternate education.
Alternate education.
Yeah, you know.
I've never heard about that.
Well, it's like you don't actually have to go to college.
Yeah.
You can take a course in whatever you wanted to do and train yourself and make something like demo project. And when you go to this is going pretty much right now, not just even in young people. I know a lot of people who wanted to change their career because they felt that it's not going anywhere. So they went and took AI courses in some smaller institutions. It was like 3-4 months or even 6 months of courses, and they've done their own projects. And when they go and apply for other places in the interview, they would show them, this is what we have done. I collected this data, I've done this application, and then you're hired.
Wow.
Left.
Yeah, so it's important to educate yourself. That's what you'd like to say. Yeah, I think I agree with that on a lot of levels, because I did a lot of work on my own to educate myself. Like even this, I came to PodCamp and I came to a couple of events before that to learn how this is done. And maybe like it's not just always about money or like career, but it actually takes you way ahead.
Yeah, and there are a lot of countries around the world who are trying to push this kind of thing. So you might look beyond the borders, right? We have the internet now. And I would also say that we also should put some pressure on education, on the institutions of education.
Definitely.
And tell them, like, look where the world is going and look where we are. So there's something wrong in our education and we have to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, specifically college education, like because in schools, you know, you learn practically mostly everything. I mean, I still think that the education schools needs a lot of change, but college education is what's going to take you to the next chapter of your life.
Exactly.
Your own. You have to go and work, and you have to prove yourself. If everything that you study in college is not going to give you that. Yeah.
You also said one thing that was really interesting to me, that you said artificial intelligence is not the biggest problem we are facing. and there's various other problems like overpopulation, or like there's so many problems that we are facing, religious conflicts. Do you think artificial intelligence can be actually used to solve those problems?
I've heard that there are some people who have done an artificial intelligence to study and to see the effects of coronavirus, which is going around.
Interesting.
Yeah, there are a lot of applications in AI in healthcare, in
Yeah.
climate change, in even overpopulation, and all of this thing. As I told you, AI is just a tool.
It's a tool.
It's what we make out of it. And there's a lot of institutions right now are trying to be independent from corporate and commercial AI and do something that is for researchers, for the better of humanity. AI for good is trending right now. I mean, like University of Toronto, the campus near St. George, they have something called Center of Ethics, and there's a series that they do every season about ethics in AI. And I go to there every time that I can, and we meet with a lot of people there, not just in the technology, people who come from a lot of walks of life because they know that the advancement of AI is going to affect them, whether they are into that field or not, right? So things like that are very important, for that matter. And things like that when they get immersed into education.
Have you seen like we are talking on phone and you go on your Instagram and you see the same thing that you talked about? I don't know the mechanics of this, or like, is there any technical stuff, or what is happening? Are they tracking us?
Well, yes, most of that is something that you've already signed into. Okay, I'll tell you another personal story as well. So we were in one of the events about data science for good and data science for good, which is data science, of course, very related to AI. AI is nothing without data science or data. And the presenter, who was also a friend of mine, they were like at least 100 person in that room. It was a big room. And he was talking about, he was just asking a question. And he said, like, how many of you have read the terms of service for Facebook? Now, I was in the first row, and of course, I read it.
Oh, you did?
I raised my hand. And he said, like, I couldn't see what's going on because I was in the first row. So he was like, looked at everybody and looked at me and said, did you know that you're the only hand that was raised in this room? Part of that is what I'm saying is the privacy.
What does it say? I've never read it in my life.
Well, I'm not going to tell you because you have to. I want to encourage you to go, but a lot of what they do and they collect, they tell you that, and you give your own consent on it. There are the other things that a lot of people don't know that they have. Since GDPR, they have added those tools where you can tell them, erase all data that you have on me.
I can actually tell them?
You can do that.
Wow.
From the app itself.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that because they don't know what to do beyond posting that photo.
Yeah.
Or something like that, which is kind of like worrying to me that you're using something and you know after all these things that this could be dangerous, but you don't know how to protect yourself against that. That is,
Yeah.
I mean, like, and read what you're getting yourself into. It might be a long read, but at least you know what you're getting. And I'm not saying that you should stop using because you cannot live in a cave anymore.
Exactly.
Right? But read those terms of service agreements and know, for that matter, and then you would know what to post and what's not. If you're okay posting everything online, but you don't come and post. I mean, like, I see those people who are taking those selfies. I am in this hotel, or I'm traveling to this country in this hotel, and I'm eating this for lunch, and then they say, "Oh, you're talking about my privacy. You're collecting my data. You're putting this in public." Right? So we have to balance. First of all, we have to redefine privacy. What is private and what's not? Because
Can you elaborate on that? Redefining privacy?
okay, so when I look at my grandmother's photos from 60, 70 years ago or something, she could barely wear short sleeves. And that's very in home. She could not wear that outside because that's disrespectful. And these are private parts of the body that should not be shown to public. I don't want to tell you what people are wearing and not wearing these days, but it's normal to us right now, Like when you see people on the beaches or all this thing, it's fine. So the definition of privacy has changed a lot, and I'm not just talking about privacy online. That's a very new thing, but privacy for humans, what was private 30, 40 years ago is a very normal thing for us right now. So we have to redefine it, and we say like, what is private? And then we have to define our personal privacy. What's private to me, and what's private, not private. Like,
Yeah.
I post a lot on social media.
Yeah.
And I don't post the stuff. I don't put, by the way, on my Facebook personally. I don't use privacy settings. I post it because I know that it's going to be accessed somewhere somehow. So what I post online is something that I'm okay with all people to see it. If I have some private stuff, I'll keep it on my even not in my laptop. I will keep it on a hard drive separately from that. So these are the things that you have to worry about. Technology cannot, whatever you don't share is something that technology cannot read on you, right?
Okay.
And what you said about collecting your data from using your phone, if you know what you're getting yourself into, and if you know how to use those machines, and there are tools, as you said, to stop these things from happening, then you just have to read.
So, like we talked about that this AI can be used in very positive ways. But let's look at the dark aspect of it, because there is a dark aspect to artificial intelligence. What do you think are the negatives of artificial intelligence?
One of the things that everybody knew about is Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
When they took your data and they micro-targeted you to change your mind. That is very damaging to democracy. Because speaking of philosophy, I read a lot of Socrates and Plato. And when I was young, I was like, Socrates is very radical about democracy and maybe he hated it, but when I look at what he said, one of the things that sometimes, a quote that sometimes it attribute to Socrates is that he said, the cornerstone of democracy is an informed citizenship. So if people are informed, if people do know what is going on around them and what is best for them, so they can vote well, they know what is good for them. But when you put people in silos, and inflame that with those algorithms that reads the darkest of their fears and feeds into them. And by the way, these algorithms are very good at reading how people. It doesn't feel right. I mean, like algorithms are very, but it reads when you design them to read what are they talking about, what they are afraid about, what are they anxious about. They are very good at reading that, and you can easily use this data to target them to inflame those fears and and to make them to change their minds totally because of the fears that they have. So this is a very dark kind of thing. I would also say things like mass surveillance. When surveil everybody and know every small details about their lives. Like you hear what happens in China, for example. If you jaywalk somewhere, you will be on the wall of shame, and you might be if you did that many times, you might find yourself on a no-fly list or a no travel list, even inside China. Yeah, that is a very few. But again, this is not technology. These are people who designed this technology to comply with that authoritarian regime to control people more. See, so that is very, very unacceptable. And by the way, there's a funny story that there was a big CEO in China of a company that was on the wall of shame once. The thing is that this is also the funny side of using technologies like that. Is like her photo was on one of those vans, the advertisement vans, and it was in the streets. So the camera looked at it and it recognized her face. It's a red signal for pedestrians. But the camera saw her picture. It didn't, of course, because it's a facial recognition. It's not designed to recognize it's so big or it's on a van. It just recognized the face and put her on a wall of shame, which was like one of the funny things. It's still wrong, of course, but it shows you also that because we also design these things, so we don't have everything in our mind. So these kinds of biases happen, and these kinds of things that affect people. Well, Nobody thought that this machine is going to look at the face that's on a van and just recognize it as a human being and put it, right?
Like, what do you think about the dark web and like all that stuff that's going on? Because that is pretty disturbing. And is there a way that AI can actually break from that? Or like, even if not AI, is there any way we can heal from that? Because it seems like the humanity has gone down the drain seeing all that stuff.
Dark web is a reflection of what humans were doing for a long, long time. Human trafficking is there before the internet. Pedophilia is there. Serial killers are there all the time. It's just so you can look at it from both sides. Now we have more visibility to it. Before now, those people were totally invisible to us, or a lot of them were totally invisible. Ironically, I was doing a speech about AI and cybersecurity like last 2 weeks ago, and dark web was a very big part because AI is having a lot of application now to fight things on dark web. Like if somebody is planning something against you or your company or your country or whatever, there's AI to scour the content on the dark web and find it and flag it to you. There's another AI that has been done now in MIT that, because those hackers are on multiple forums and they don't use the same screen name everywhere, so that they would make the forces of law, whether they are police or cybercrime, it makes it very difficult to recognize, is it the same person here and there, or there are a lot of people. So this AI is actually analyzing the typing, the style of typing, or the style of language that is used, and it say like, it is probable that this person on this forum, this person on this forum, and that person on that forum are all the same person, because they're using the same type of typing, or they use the same phrasing. So it's that thing that the law enforcement are doing for years could take years sometime to create that relation. Now it could be created in days or probably weeks, for that matter, using AI. So there is a lot.
Very interesting.
As I told you, every tool could be used with and against. Besides, not everything on the dark web, by the way, is bad. There are a lot of political activism on the dark web. Like there are a lot of groups in North Korea that use the dark web to bring material and news from the West, the world of the West, or the democratic world, and show it to the people.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There are a lot. There are actually hacker groups on the dark web to fight pedophiles. They're hackers. They don't say their names and they're totally anonymized, but their purpose is to fight bad people on the dark web. So that's what I'm telling you, is like being aware of what is going on is what makes people less fearless, because there are good people all around the world. Good people are way more than bad people, but our human nature is like when something bad happens, it just
triggers something.
Triggers because we hate bad things, right?
Yeah. So what is your message to millennials who are constantly, like even millennials, not even millennials, like everyone who are constantly in fear of technology? What is your message to them? How do we change that whole dynamic of being fearful to being aware?
Ironically, millennials are the least have the fear of technology, or at least statistically speaking, because they were born into that one. But of course, there's a wide variety of people who are fearful of that thing, whether they are millennials or not. But again, I would say the quote that life lived in fear is a life half lived. Being in fear of anything is not a good thing. And the best thing to fight something, I mean, like, look at it, we always knew since we were a kid that the best way to fight your enemy is to know who they are, right? And to know who they are, you have to get into that. You have to see what is on. So get there, learn about these things. There's a lot of material on the internet that tells you what AI is being used for, right? There's actually, I mean, I don't like to promote anything, but there was a show on YouTube called The Age of AI. It's by Google.
Really?
I know it's a corporate thing, and sometimes inflaming their own to show their goodness or something. But nonetheless, it shows that there are a lot of applications of AI being used for good. So when people watch that and see that, okay, so you don't want, if you don't like to do that under a corporation, there's a lot of space there to do it your own. Doesn't cost a lot nowadays, And again, as I said, awareness is the key. If you're aware of what's going on and you're educating yourself, then there's nothing to fear. Of course, you have to be worried about bad usage, but you have to know it.
It was great to have you here, and you actually there are so many things that I never even heard about. I didn't know that dark web and these dark aspects could be actually used for good, and I think that's what a lot of people need to hear, that we need to be more aware about the stuff that's going around us. I have never read the privacy. I think that's what the first thing I'm going to do. Go home and read the privacy statement on Facebook.
Yeah, that's why I didn't tell you about that, because I wanted you to read it.
Yeah.
And to read it carefully. And maybe your listeners are going to do that.
Definitely. I would love them to read that and educate themselves. But this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back with another episode of Wish Talk, and stay tuned by then.